Welcome to Lynn Cullen Live. Talk radio without the static. Email your questions and comments to lynncullenshow@gmail.com. And now your host, Lynn Cullen.
Hey there. Welcome to the program. It's August 8th. Wow. August 8th, 2022. August 11, 1922, a little girl was born in Galesburg, Illinois. That's my mom. So her 100th birthday is 3 days away now. We've been counting down for a long time, and I'll be heading that way Thursday morning, the day of her birthday, so I can get there in time for the celebration. So there will be no program on Thursday because I got more important things to attend to. I talked to my mother 2 days ago, and she just sounds incredible. I mean, she just sounds full of life, happy to be alive, interested in life, ready to laugh. Amazing. And she's very aware of how how lucky, of course, she is. So I'm really looking forward to this. I am not looking forward to traveling. I just saw a headline that said something about 11,000 flights being canceled this weekend. And flying, dealing with the airlines has never been one of my favorite pursuits. But man, now, given the fact that I suppose most of the passengers will not have masks on, oh God, it's just, we live in Crazyville. We really live in Crazyville. I do not, however, want to fail to note that over the weekend, some amazing and extraordinary things happened. The United States Senate actually passed major legislation. Of course, they did it without a single Republican vote. They did it with all 50 Democrats holding together, and the tie from Vice President Harris. So huge. Every time I read, something about the measure they passed, invariably it talks about what wasn't in it. Well, look, this is definitely should be, even for pessimists like me, one of those moments when you look at the glass as half full. Seriously, a lot of really good stuff got passed, and Americans will feel the results. Now, whether or not they know that it's a result of Democrats and that Republicans tried to stymie all of this, that is certainly not a sure thing. Most people don't pay any attention to this stuff. So the one thing I cannot get out of my head is that Republicans actually specifically voted against capping the cost of insulin for all Americans who need it. And America is rife with people who need insulin to live. And Republicans voted against capping the price that insurance companies could pay at $35 a month. Amazing. Just amazing. People on Medicare will have it capped. But if your insurance is from the private sector, Republicans say, nope, no, I'm sorry. Oh, no, and they're never sorry. And it would seem on that vote alone, you could take down some of these people. On that vote alone. It's just mind-blowing, their cruelty. So Democrats, do what Democrats do. They believe in government, and they believe that government's job is to make the lives of Americans better. So the law that was passed with no Republican voting for it will lower energy costs for Americans, will make health care more accessible and affordable for Americans, will make prescription drugs finally, not all. We're starting out with 10 and we're going to grow it from there. Those costs we should start see coming down. And Republicans voted against all of it because Republicans see their role as protecting companies, protecting drug companies, protecting oil companies, and protecting the rich. Really something. So, I feel like you probably all listened to, taken in more information about all of that than I have, but that was good. And another good thing that I read about, as you know, with the abortion decision from our illustrious Supreme Court, now, by the way, at its lowest approval rating in history. Americans used to, that was the one institution that Americans said, well, but the Supreme Court, they're okay. And now they are down in the dumps, as they should be. Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump destroyed the institution and America's faith in it. But as you know, in his concurring opinion in the Dobbs case, that Clarence Thomas said that given what they had just done in regard to a woman's right to control her own body, that based on the jurisprudence they employed, which, believe me, was done in a sloppy, legalistic way. Thomas suggested, of course, that then the court should take another look at their rulings on gay marriage and even on access to contraception. Well, that, of course, prompted Democrats in the Congress to immediately try to get a law passed that clearly states that the will of the people of this country is to protect and respect marriage between any two consenting adults. And that was called I think they called it the Respect for Marriage Act. So it quickly, of course, passed the House, which is under Democratic control. And in order to pass that Senate, it needs minimally 10 Republicans to go on record as standing behind gay marriage. You think this is a done deal? My guess is that they will scrounge up 10. But that means that there might be 38 Republican senators who will vote no on gay marriage, something that Americans very quickly learned to accept as obviously a good thing. Now, the person who's the point person on this, the senator who is not normally in the spotlight, but who is the person who is attempting to pull 10 Republicans over, is Tammy Baldwin, the senator from Wisconsin, who herself is, gay. In fact, she was the first openly gay woman elected to Congress in 1999. There are already some Republicans on board, 5, and some of the usual suspects: Susan Collins, Rob Portman, but that's because his son came out as gay, and that's all a lot of Republicans need. Oh, my family? Okay. Rob Portman, Lisa Murkowski, Tom Tillis of North Carolina, and I don't pretend to know what his backstory is. And the other one who said he would vote for it is mind-boggling, because it is the other senator from Wisconsin, Ron Johnson, who is the most loathsome, appalling, stop the steal, COVID is a hoax lunatic that the Republicans have on their side. Well, what do you mean the most loathsome? I mean, there's this loathsome. I'm sorry. Boy, I sound like it's Monday, don't I? God damn. Wish I could get my head together a little bit more here, guys. Anyway, they're not sure about Johnson, even though he said he would, because he's the kind of guy who says he would, and then on some procedural thing will disappear. So at this point, they've got 4 certain. And note who's missing here. You know, people always like to say Mitt Romney is he's an okay guy. Well, he's not on that list yet. And she's on him. Tammy Baldwin is specifically targeting Romney. Because listen to this. The entire House delegation from his state of Utah voted for it. And they're all Republicans. So in the House, those Republicans from Utah, which you think of as an extremely conservative state because of its Mormon population, they voted for it. But Romney is staying mum. It suggests to me that he would vote for it as well. But guys, they're hoping to bring this up sometime after Labor Day. And that is another possible win for Democrats in this recalcitrant, soporific Congress. which is good. My God, they're getting some stuff done. Who would have thought it? Who would have thunk it? Not me. So that's all good, as far as I can tell. I came upon a quote from Carl Sagan. And this is from a book he wrote about his love of science. And it was written in 1995. Doesn't seem that long ago, but in many ways it was another world ago. And it's interesting to hear how he was looking at the future, the near future, what is now our present, with a sense of foreboding. And that's exactly the word he used. He said this, I will read it. I have a foreboding of an America in my children's and grandchildren's time, when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the key manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issue. When the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when clutching at crystals and nervously consulting horoscopes are critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide almost without noticing back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media. The 30-second sound bites now down to 10 seconds or less. Lowest common denominator programming. Credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. Well, I think he nailed it. I don't know that I wouldn't have written the same thing in 95. And I also, as you know, have held media in contempt and responsible for helping to dumb down Americans, because our media is profit-driven. And if it's profit-driven, it's not thinking about what is the best thing that we can do for people to ensure that they understand their government and what's happening in their cities and towns. No, that's not what they're thinking. If it's a for-profit business, they're thinking, how do we attract as many eyeballs as we possibly can and keep them entertained so that we can sell them to advertisers? And the more eyeballs, the more money we make. Well, you do that by making news entertainment. And that's what it is. By and large, that's what it is now. And it has dumbed down. What he says about the soundbite thing, I mean, I've mentioned that. When I started in television, you could let an interviewee speak. There was none of this concern about the person at home getting bored listening to an explanation of something. So you were actually able to inform more. But then the orders literally came down from on high. You can't let anybody talk for more than, some arbitrary 10 seconds. And then 10 seconds yields 6 seconds. Well, nobody can say much anything in 6 seconds. You lose all gray, all nuance, all supporting material. You get a bunch of guff. And if news is entertainment, why, you sure as hell don't go and cover meetings. Not unless somebody's going to start screaming or do something outrageous, but a regular meeting where governance actually occurs? No. First of all, they go on and on and on, and it becomes impossible to sort of get it down to 6 seconds. So you stop covering that seemingly dull stuff because it's not the kind of thing that collects eyeballs. And when I became most freaked out, and I've told you this, but this Sagan's quote made me think of it again. When computers came in and we were all given computers of our own, we were told that our stories that we would type into these computers would be subjected to, I don't think they use the word algorithm. I don't think any of us knew what that was, but subjected to a program of some sort that would ascertain at what grade level our story was written. And needless to say, I was always having red flags put up because my grade level was too high, because I would use a word that was not recognizable to a fourth grader. And this is how you get, slowly, you work on the attention span. And as our attention spans have got, I was thinking how this is so true, how we are programmed now to expect something instantaneously. That we have been programmed to be almost incapable of waiting. We'll see how that unfolds. People used to sit around and wait for stuff to happen in due course. And what news does now is, because it cannot tolerate waiting, having created this attention span that it too now has of about 2 seconds, it spends its time speculating. Half of the paper, half of the newscasts, all cable television, almost totally, it consists not of news, but of speculation about what is going to happen, because we can't wait. Drives me nuts. Okay, I've got a bigger thing to talk about here, and this totally freaked me out. It is not that I'm necessarily shocked; it's that it underscored for me just how dangerous the Republican Party has become. We have talked many times about how Republicans have played the long game for a long time, and I tip my hat to them for that, because our crowd doesn't do it. And it's borne fruit. So they bothered with the little things like school board races and state legislative races, county councils. Seemingly, Democrats apparently just care about who the president. That's it. That's all we care about. National election, right? Every 4 years you wake up and no. So what we have found out, and we know this is true because we've seen it here in Pennsylvania, is that Republicans have been exceedingly busy, essentially taking control of state legislatures. And they do control more than half of all state legislatures. And it turns out, this is what I didn't know. They are so organized that they work together. Now, again, I've seen this with legislation. They send around legislation to each other. So we pass this, and then the next one passes it. It does not come out of the specific state legislature. No, this is an overarching thing that comes from big money and think tanks and organizations created specifically to create legislation for these Republican-dominated legislatures. Well, almost every Republican who holds the position of state treasurer, and that, ladies and gentlemen, is about, again, half of all state treasurers are Republicans, are actually working together. The state treasurer of this state and that state get together, and they're working in tandem to keep climate legislation from passing. What the hell does that have to do with the state treasurer? They take their positions. They see what power is in them. Then they get together and create a block of power. Over the past years, just this year, these Republican treasurers in half of the states of this country have been coordinating on tactics and talking points, meeting in private, and it's all part of a real well-funded campaign to protect the oil industry. Well, you can bet some of that money's coming from the oil industry. Listen to what they've done. Here's one of them, Treasurer of West Virginia. That'd be a Mr. Riley Moore. He announced, with the backing of all his other Republican treasurer friends, he announced just this week that Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, and Wells Fargo, I think there are others, but those are the ones I've got here, would henceforth be barred from government contracts in West Virginia. Because apparently the state treasurer can, I guess, do such a thing just like that. So here are these huge banks, and he says, don't even bother trying to do business here. We won't have you. And why won't they have these banks? Because all three banks are on record as saying they are reducing their investments in coal. So this is now what Republicans are doing. So they're going after people you would never think Republicans would go after. It's like DeSantis in Florida going after Disney. They are going after corporations, banks. It doesn't matter. Anyone who publicly comes out supporting something that the Republicans don't like, and they will take any means to make them pay. The treasurers of Louisiana and Arkansas have pulled more than $700 million out of BlackRock, which is an investment manager, because BlackRock, they say, is too focused on environmental issues. So these Republican treasurers are actively and cohesively going after any company, any bank that in any way shows that it might be trying to sort of move toward the right path. There's a little organization in Shawnee, Kansas, that is the heart of this. That's where the State Financial Officers Foundation, that's a nonprofit. And this is the one. This is where the money comes from. This is where the organization comes from. What is a state treasurer? A state treasurer is responsible for managing the state's finances. Now, it is you have never heard of a state treasurer using that position for such clearly partisan political ends. But this is how Republicans operate. They see every position as having power that can be harnessed and used, even if in a non-traditional way like this. Democrats don't do this. Democrats still cling to this idea, how old-fashioned, that existed up until just the other day, that a job like a treasurer, state treasurer, is a nonpartisan job. That's the way it's been, nonpartisan, that there's a nonpartisan or bipartisan ethic among state treasurers that used to exist because their position wasn't political. It was about fiduciary responsibility. That's all it was. Toodle-oo. This is Republicans. They seek power and they use power. And you know what else they do? They are forever telling us what they're intending to do or are doing by instead suggesting that it's somebody else who's doing that. It's what Trump did all the time, projecting. If Trump would say, I'll tell you what, the election's rigged, then you know what that means is he's trying to rig it. That's what they do. They think of these things and then they ascribe them to their opponents, or as they would say, their enemies. Heading over to Michigan, where the Republicans are of a particularly insane variety. I don't know if you're aware of this. There was an investigation going on in that state about possible tampering with voting machines. And the state police were called in. And I know the state police of any state are not like a progressive organization. The state police, in trying to unravel if there was felonious activity with voting machines in Michigan, doggedly pursuing leads and clues, uncovered an obvious crime and uncovered that the perpetrators were high-level Republican office holders. And they had, in fact, apparently broken in to voting machines. So this is in Michigan, where the Stop the Steal movement got really crazy. And one of the Republicans, who was the big Stop the Steal guy, Donald Trump loves this guy. His name is, who cares, DePerno. He's now running for the chief law enforcement officer in Michigan, Attorney General, Matt DePerno. Well, now it looks like the Republican running for the Attorney General himself was breaking in to voting machines. The current Attorney General, who is a Democrat, who was obviously involved in this investigation, has thrown up her hands and said, okay, I got to step away now because we didn't know this was going to lead to my opponent, but it has. And so she's now calling for a special prosecutor because we're looking at criminal charges that are heavy and come with serious jail time. I mean, it is unbelievable what they're now saying that these guys did. This is the guy who more than any insisted that the vote in Michigan had been rigged. And it turns out he's the one who rigged it, trying to rig it for Trump. He and his cohort, there's like 9 people that are now caught in this net. That they actually took machines out of the local clerk's offices for weeks at a time. And the police say one machine was subjected to extensive physical tampering. One of the other people caught up in this is a county sheriff, because county sheriffs have been part of this group of Republicans who are just bound and determined that no Democrat will win again. So this looks like it could be a real ugly situation. It's a 5-year felony for anyone to obtain possession of a voting machine. It's a 5-year felony to conspire with anyone else to commit an offense regarding the voting machine. And this clearly is this coordinated plan by these guys from a number of counties in Michigan. 5 different machines were taken from, 4 different counties to hotels or Airbnb rentals. And there they were broken into. And it was determined during the investigation that this Republican friend of Trump's, who wants to be the Attorney General, was present in the hotel room during this activity. Wow. And this guy first rose to prominence in the Republican Party after the November 2020 election because he began squawking about unproven claims of fraud in certain counties in Michigan. Now, I'm not sure what these guys were up to. Were they up to tampering with the machine so that it would look like someone else had tampered with them? I don't know. So you create the crime, and I mean it's just, I'm sorry, my head's exploding, because this kind of thing that now Michigan has uncovered, this specific thing. This is going on all over. Mastriano here, by the way, who has picked up the support of Ron DeSantis. Yeah. These people are as treasonous a bunch of fascists as you could round up. And as usual, they're open about it. Mastriano has very happily said that if he's governor, he controls the machinery of the election. Licking his lips. Can't wait. Unbelievable. All right, so I'm just telling you, you gotta pay attention. You gotta. Yeah, Chuck. Chuck says, over the weekend, I was fascinated to learn about Vote-A-Rama. This is, again, this shows your Congress in the disarray that it is. You know, it's because of Senate rules. Over the years, cynical, manipulative people in charge have created a system in the Senate which makes this is why it's so remarkable what happened this weekend. It makes it almost impossible for the Senate to get anything done. All it is gamesmanship now. It's you got to know how to play this absurd game they've created for themselves. Vote-A-Rama being just one. Chuck puts in this definition from Google. A Vote-A-Rama is a procedure in the United States Senate that allows senators to propose an unlimited number of amendments to budget-related measures. After brief debate, the amendments are each voted on in rapid succession. Now, this is so, obviously, the Republicans knew they didn't have the votes. So this then becomes harassment, trying to throw as many amendments, trying to peel off one little part of a bill or another part of a bill. Like so many other processes in our government, says Chuck, this seems so archaic, like the filibuster. Why do we allow? No, many of these are not archaic. That's what's so funny. They're relatively recent. This bull about needing 60 votes before you can even get to a regular vote, these things are recent. That is not how the founding fathers created these. The Senate was allowed to create its own rules, and over the years, and especially Republicans, although Democrats have had something to do with it when they're in power, but creating these rules that allow, at the time, that allow them maybe to get something accomplished, or allow them to keep something from being accomplished. But they've created such a spider's web of insanity. I don't know how somebody could even stomach having to deal within such a corrupted system. And I can't imagine what it does to you. I really can't. Roger writes, after having all of my flights canceled to Montreal this year, I learned that the best way to travel is to take direct flights and take the first flight in the morning, 6 a.m. Yeah, I know that's the right way. I just so hate getting up that early. Of course, that's the right way. Bite the bullet and don't sleep at all and just get on the first one. That's not what I'm scheduled for. And it makes sense. First flights are much less likely to be canceled, and direct flights eliminate getting stuck at an airport. Well, the problem is if your destination is a little town like Green Bay, Wisconsin, there are no direct flights. And for that matter, a little town like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where increasingly you can't get direct flights from Pittsburgh to what I would consider another major city, it's just impossible. So it always involves at least two planes, and sometimes not great connections, and then who knows? Yeah, you get stuck. Roger also writes, by the way, CBS Sunday Morning yesterday showed that 24 states with Republican leadership actually penalize companies trying to go green. Yeah, well, that's what they do now. Republicans the old Republicans we thought of as friends of corporate America, they still are in some respects. But make no mistake, they'll go after them in a second if they're looking, what Republicans would say, woke. I mean, they'll just go after them. They use power. They seek it, and then they use it. And they often use it in creative ways, in vengeful ways. There is something to behold, and they're dangerous as holy hell. God. Dangerous as holy hell. So the other day, I mentioned that I'd seen this thing about electric vehicles, and I couldn't access the article, and now I have it. But I some of you probably don't find this as interesting as I do, but this is about what will electric vehicles sound like. And I, in my naivete, said, well, surely they're going to have to agree that they'll sound the same, just like, a internal combustion engine cars now sound the same. Yeah, we all know what a car approaching or leaving sounds like. And that it would seem that if you were going to allow every electric vehicle to have its own sound, which is what's happening now, that would create like such a cacophony of insanity in a urban landscape. And also, I think would be unsafe. You wouldn't know what the hell anything was anymore. We're trained to hear certain things as alerts and or threats, and we're trained to pay no attention to other sounds that are relatively constant. This is what we were talking about before, that there's a neurobiology of hearing, that anything familiar, a familiar sound, like the kind of old-fashioned gas-powered cars or air conditioners, these are not sounds that wake us up if they're the usual background noise in our lives. It's irregular sounds that wake you up, that alert you. But anything can become repetitive over time. So, such as, stop and think of like car alarms. When they first came out, man, when you'd hear a car alarm, you'd jump up. Is it my car? Is it my neighbor's car? Is somebody stealing? You remember that? How long ago was that? And then very quickly, a car alarm going off just became an annoyance. You didn't even bother to look. Maybe it even was your car being taken away. It didn't even occur to you, right? So sometimes these systems designed to alert you that you need to pay attention also sort of become so routine that they don't serve their purpose anymore. So the fact that most vehicles will be electric pretty soon means we got to figure out what we're going to do. And as it turns out, when Obama was president, they were already thinking about this, and the Pedestrian Safety Enhancement Act got passed, and that says that every electric vehicle must come equipped with a pedestrian warning system, which would emit noise from external speakers when the car is traveling below 18 miles per hour. That's what that bill said. Now, I would have thought that would mean that they'd also, the National Transportation Safety Board or somebody would say, yeah, but let's have them all do the same sound, sort of like the combustion engine, so we learn what that is. And that's not what has happened. And anyway, the regulators say, how the hell do you put into regulatory legal language what a car should sound like? So, you've got composers, acoustical engineers, musicians, all kinds of folks coming up with what should a car sound like. And it runs the gamut. We do know that pedestrians and bicyclists are more endangered by electric vehicles. Much greater likelihood of getting hit by one of them. And part of that is because the usual sounds that we attribute to cars are not coming out of electric vehicles. I don't know. They figure that in 5 years, 80%. Well, that can't be in 5 years. 80% will be electric already. I don't know. Stop and think. Can you imagine having the ability to figure that out? If they do this wrong, the urban soundscape could drive you flat out insane. Stop and think. They right now are allowing a unique sound identity for every auto. Not just every make of every, because some of the automakers have different sounds for different cars in their inventory. I just can't imagine. In December of 2020, as part of a software update, it says here that Tesla drivers were informed that you are now able to delight pedestrians with a variety of sounds from your vehicle's external speaker. including goat bleats, ice cream truck music, and flatulence. Oh, God. In early 2022, the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration said to Tesla, you know, I think you're going a little too far with some of this. And they issued another software update that I guess they can't make all those noises when they're driving. But it says right here, Teslas can still fart when parked. Oh, my God. So I just found all of that interesting. What would a car sound like if you could make them sound like a car? I don't know. I'm so, you know, I'm like one of those people who on my phone stop and think about when you know, with our little cell phones, how many people use the old-fashioned ringtone on their newfangled. And in fact, I have a friend who has this terrible ringtone that he's chosen. And every time it goes off, I get angry because it's aggressive and obnoxious. And that is the kind of thing that we can have on the streets. Oh, my poor head. I mean, automakers originally asked to have the ability to allow every car buyer to decide on their own what the car would sound like. So, oh God. And I can't imagine being in all those meetings, but it took them a while. But the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration finally said, no, you can't do that. You can't make it that customizable because this is an alert system we're talking about. This is a public safety thing we're talking about. And it shouldn't have to do with whatever silly sound some person wants their car to sound like as it's driving around the streets. But there will be plenty of that as well. Oh my God. You know, here's one of those alert sounds that I wish would go away because I find it just unbearable. It's the backup sound, those backup beepers on trucks. And in this article, which is about the neurobiology of hearing, they say that an aggressive, they call that an aggressive sound, that was employed and decided upon because, unlike the car alarm going off, that's a sound you will never be able to disregard. Although I'm trying. Anyway, strange stuff. Interesting stuff. I think that is correct. So, is that it? I think that's it. I can tell from the time. That's it. All right. I'll try to have my head a little more together for Mondays are hard for me. They're hard for all of us, aren't they? Been, lolling around on the weekend and hard to get back in the saddle. But anyway, here we are. Talk at you tomorrow.
Lynn Cullen Live, Monday through Thursday from 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. and archived at pghcitypaper.com. The opinions expressed on Lynn Cullen Live are those of the host and do not necessarily reflect the viewpoints of Pittsburgh City Paper or its advertisers.